initially, I found this very disturbing. Initially, the government said, we have not given any new powers to cabinet ministers. We have merely clarified the existing powers under the Public Health Act. Well, a month later, they proved that to be a lie when Tyler Shandro created new sections of law to give the chief medical officer access to the personal, private, confidential health records of Albertans and turn that information over to police.
Why?
Tyler Shandro did that with the stroke of a pen without any review or approval by the Legislative Assembly, which shows that when the government said Bill 10 merely clarifies powers, I mean, that was simply a bald-faced lie. It did give power to cabinet ministers to just write laws on the fly. Now, the reason, in response to your question, the reason given was that allegedly somebody had coughed on a police officer. And, I think, okay, fine, we can do a very careful, narrow piece of legislation to deal with that situation. We could say, look, if you cough on a police officer, by doing so, you're forfeiting your privacy rights, and then Alberta Health can, upon request of the police, they can give information to the police, not your whole records, but they can tell the police this person does or does not have tuberculosis, HIV, COVID, whatever else. Right? You can deal with that problem in a targeted way. What they did instead is to say, okay, well, now we're changing the law. Chief medical officer has access to the health records of Albertans, and she can turn information over to the police. Like that's outrageous.
Yeah, I love your expression. It's my inner expression. How did they get this through in 48 hours? Don't you have to go through a first, second, third reading and royal assent? Or did they do this under the Emergencies Acts? Like, how did they do this with no oversight? That gets to me. I just find that, I mean, here we are. What is the other act that Jason Kenney is pursuing that he thought would get royal assent by July, where we can have referenda and recalls, which makes him seem like a very populist leader. But then on the other hand, this is going on. I just don't get it. It's so duplicitous, So how did they get, back to that question, how did they get 3 readings and royal assent?
In Alberta, there's a tradition of the legislature sitting for very long hours and pushing bills through very quickly. And I'm told by MLAs that they go from early in the morning until 11 p.m. they're in the legislature. So you've got all these bills, and they're moving very, very quickly, and they're getting Bill 1, Bill 2, Bill 1 first reading, Bill 2 first reading, Bill 3 first reading. And it's kind of bang, 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 and then second reading, and then third reading. So Bill 10 was legitimately passed by the Legislative Assembly, because it did have first and second and third reading and royal assent and came into force. But they did that very quickly in 48 hours, which is not illegal, but it's not good for democracy when, you'd have to ask.
Why does it take so long for the referendum and then 48 hours for the Bill 10?
Well, I think this is a second, I think Bill 10 was passed in March, April, because it was kind of at the height of the lockdowns, and they wanted to get that through quickly. Mm-hmm. And then the legislature took a break, and now the legislature has been back in session again, kind of for a second sitting. And now we got Bill 24, which extends emergency powers past the lockdown, which is
tell us about scary. That, because that's a fresh one.
So Bill 24, it extends, this whole giving the chief medical officer access to medical records to turn that over to police. That was supposed to expire in August. Okay, Bill 24 extends it to the end of 2021. So for another 16 months, the chief medical officer can turn Albertans' health information over to police through to the end of December 2021. That's scary. Is this
a protracted period to allow them to come up with vaccines? I can't come up with any justification for this prolongation.
I try to stay away from what people's motives are, because I never really know. I find it creepy, though, how people are talking about vaccines as if this is something that you just kind of develop in a few months. The fact is, to develop a vaccine
takes 10 years.
or 20 years or 5 years. And in some cases, never. I mean, they still haven't, there's all kinds of diseases that they've been working for decades trying to find a vaccine, and they haven't found it. And, HIV is one. There's no vaccine for that. So there's other diseases. So this whole confidence that, like, we're going to have a vaccine against COVID, well, yes, it's possible, but it would take years, and the virus mutates. Because it's like your annual flu shot. If you choose to get a flu shot, okay, fine. But there's all kinds of strains of the flu. I had a bad flu last year, and I asked my doctor, I said, if I had gotten a flu shot, would I have gotten sick? And he said, yeah, you would have, because the type of flu you have is not covered by the vaccine. Yeah. So COVID-19 is going to become, there's going to be a COVID-20 and a COVID-21, and the vaccine is going to be useless. But I certainly would not allow myself to be injected by something that is not proven safe, let alone effective.
So it seems that you have the one sword the public can use, which is the Charter of Freedoms, and that's the one thing that people have going for them in their defense, in their objection to this lockdown. It's not even a lockdown, it's just the cessation of living. The fullness of life is just gone. I mean, you're limited.
It's joy killing. Like, you can't go to
you can't
go to Cirque du Soleil.
Very good.
And I think about all the joy that was killed, all the school plays that were canceled, all the piano recitals, the dance recitals, all of the graduation ceremonies. You've spent 12 years working on, towards your grade 12 diploma. It's very significant. Yeah. And now you just get to have a Zoom chat. I mean, it's taking the life out of life.
It is, and I think the outcome might be worse than we imagine. I mean, I imagine that the level of depression and the leading to suicide will increase. Those numbers need to be in their numbers, don't they?
Absolutely. The Charter requires the politicians to look at, for example, and there'd be many things, but the suicide rates go up with unemployment. The higher the unemployment, the more people are killing themselves, because unemployment is profoundly devastating psychologically when you cannot earn money to support yourself, to support your spouse, your kids, other people that depend on you. It's profoundly debilitating psychologically. It does lead to depression, anxiety, despair. It contributes to alcoholism, drug overdoses, suicides. And
we're seeing spikes on that, aren't we? Across the country.
There's more and more bad data coming out. But the politicians need to analyze it, and they need to make a concerted effort, a serious effort, a sincere effort to find out all of the harms of the lockdown. And so far, I don't see any government in Canada, neither federally nor provincially, that has actually made a public commitment to a wholehearted and sincere exploration of all the harms of the lockdown.
That's right.
And they're breaking their obligation under the Charter to do a full analysis.
So we need the numbers on COVID threat versus joy killing numbers. We need to do that, because it can't get a whole lot worse than it is. Or can it get a whole lot worse? Well, I mean, what are we facing? If they don't stop this behavior, these lockdowns, they're not even at phase 3. They're still in phase 1 and phase 2, and even phase 3 and phase 4 don't have dates, and they're kind of fuzzy, and we might go back and,
phase back into phase 2 after being in phase 3.
Yeah.
The legal justification for the lockdowns came to an end at some point in the month of April, once it became clear that the information that was provided to us in March is false. We know that. In March, we were told this is a threat to everybody. Everybody needs to be very, very afraid. This is going to kill children and young people. It's going to cause permanent health damage to large numbers of young people. Right. This is a deadly killer that's going to kill millions of people around the world. This is what we were told in March. Well, we're in July. It's not true. Even in April, it was already becoming pretty clear that no, it's not true. It's not harmful to children. It's only a threat to elderly people who are already very ill. So
you have a suggestion for people, what to do?
Contact your member of parliament, and more importantly, contact your provincial representative, your MLA or MPP, depending on what province you live in, contact your provincial representative and say, I want the lockdowns lifted yesterday. I want it lifted tomorrow. There isn't a justification because the lockdowns are based on information that the politicians and the chief medical officers were putting out there in March and into early April, doing all this fear mongering. And I'm not saying they were deliberately lying. I mean, maybe they sincerely believed what they were saying. Okay, I don't question that. But those reasons for a temporary lockdown would have been justified because it was a scary new disease. We didn't know much about it. We still don't know a lot about it, but we know a lot more now than what we did in March.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Now, if they want to get that data, can they get it from your website?
We've taken a stab at it. We wrote a paper on Alberta called No Longer Demonstrably Justified. We released that May the 13th. And we go through more the issues. The government has the capacity to come up with all this data. I mean, in Alberta,
but they haven't.
They haven't, and that's the problem. And they're violating our Constitution by not deliberately, fully, thoroughly investigating every aspect of lockdown harm and getting those numbers. We're trying to do the best we can. We're kind of doing their homework for them. We're trying to take a stab at it, but we have 15 people. The Alberta government has 20,000 that can pour through the data and look at our suicide rates and depression and mental health and drug overdoses and deaths from canceled surgeries. They've got 20,000 people to gather that information.
That's just in Alberta.
That's just in Alberta.
Yeah. Across Canada, they have that. So your site is jccf.ca, so they can go there, the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. And by the way, when have you the court has approved your challenge in Alberta, right?
Bill 10.
So do you have an estimate in your mind when you'll get a court date for that?
Well, hopefully, we're fortunate in that the court agreed with us that it was an emergency application, so that was good. Because the courts, unfortunately, they've also bought into, the Jason Kenney, Dina Hinshaw claims that as many as 32,000 Albertans could die. Courts have bought into this and shut down, which is horrible for access to justice. But
did that shutdown just happen again, or is this the old shutdown?
Well, there's been a gradual relaxation where they've now, depending on which province, they've made it possible to have some hearings by video conference.
Right.
So the courts are starting to move again. But for our court action against Bill 10, we applied for and received permission to have it go ahead.
Because it was deemed emergency, they'll hear it. If it's not deemed emergency, because a lot of things aren't deemed emergency in the courts. So that was critical that you got that. So what are you thinking this year, this fall?
Well, hopefully we'll get a hearing in the fall and get a decision, a month or two or three thereafter. But I can't predict it.
Yeah, well, we want to cover that. That's for sure. The Wedge. Okay. Well, you're amazing. And what about Bill 24? Could you fold that in, like in the omnibus bill, in your court process?
I think. I don't know if we'll file a separate court action or if we'll amend the existing court action and also tackle Bill 24 at the same time. One of those two, but we're tentatively planning to challenge Bill 24 in addition to Bill 10. Hopefully we'll have enough information and enough evidence to be able to challenge that if there's future lockdowns.
Sounds like you're the one who's going to be doing the crunching numbers as evidence, since nobody else is doing it.
We're trying to do what the politicians should be doing. They have the resources, they have their tens of thousands of civil servants to find out all of this data. They're not doing it. We're doing the best we can on Maggie.
A Canadian hero, you really are.
You're too kind.
We have a few of them rising.
Just doing my job. Doing my job.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure speaking with you.